good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Show live here for you today. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and I am so excited to be with you early this morning as we dive into this phenomenal Think and Grow Rich text by Napoleon Hill. We'll talk about that early on. If you have never perused through this text, if you have never purchased this text, we'll make sure, first of all, that we will put a link in the chat for you in on YouTube, on Facebook Live for you so that you can get your own copy of Think and Grow Rich. I am so excited to be here with you today, not only because we're going to be diving into this persistence chapter of this great book, but I'm joined by some phenomenal co-hosts and an even more phenomenal guest. So I don't even want to keep talking. I want to bring everybody into the conversation. Let's start off by the young lady who is known by just one name. You just say one name and she appears. Pegeen, how are you this morning?
Boom,
You- And you are
boom.
on
Good
mute.
morning. Good
Oh, no,
morning. Good.
I hear you now. I hear you now. Go.
Good. Yeah, I was muted, which is like, how can you mute me? I am so excited to be here. Persistence, and with Wendy Gates Corbett, who is phenomenal. You know, persistence is what you need to do to become who you choose to be. And I am
Mm.
very clear that you get to choose who you want to be. And so I am so thrilled that we're here to talk about Think and Grow Rich. You see my beat up book going over here. This is I persistently have read this book for many, many years before my hair was gray. So this is going to be a good day, Peter. This is going to be a really good day.
I'm
And just
I'm
that,
excited. I'm excited, Pegeen. I'm excited to dive into this because even if as I recall, last week we really unpacked persistence. This week we're gonna go even deeper.
yeah, this week is going to be, I already could feel it. Everybody that's watching, make sure you have pen and paper for notes. Make sure if you have your book, get your book out because today there is some dynamite pieces of wisdom that are going to make you feel, ooh, so good.
Love that, Pegeen. And listen, I'm gonna invite everyone to think: what does persistence look like in your life? What does that look like in your life? Well, I'm going to bring in our distinguished co-host who also goes by one name, but we know her also as the Master Builder. And McNeil, you went in on persistence last week so hard that I think I lost sleep a little bit.
Oh my goodness. Good morning, Ann McNeil, the master builder. Yes, helping you to create a stronger and better life and business persistently. And decided that I would start these programs, this Mastermind Live, in my introduction with questions. And so as you continue to join us, we're going to change up a little bit and pull you into this conversation by asking you to pull out your book, like Begane said, and delve into the book as we discuss this principle with our guests week to week to week. And our guest today is none other than actually a friend, a sister from a lot of different places, but I'm not going to get into that, not hosting today. But my question for you really is this. The author tells us that persistence is a lot of things. But I would like to know, like Bekina asked the question, do you think that persistence is a state of mind and it can be cultivated? Is that true or false? Do you
Ooh,
think that persistence is a state of mind and it can be cultivated? True or false? You can put your comments in the chat. We'll keep asking that throughout the show. And of course, we'll give you the answer later in the page. Thanks.
I love that. I love that. And it's even said another way, is persistence a mindset and can it be cultivated? Can this be your mindset? I think I know what my answer is, but I'm not going to share my answer with everybody else right now as well. Let's just jump right into. I want to bring Wendy out. Let me tease Wendy a little bit, not too much, but I'm gonna tease her profile for the audience a little bit if I could. Wendy believes in the power of building belonging within people and places. She champions this through her speaking, her training, and consulting work as the president of Signature Presentations. She wants every employee to experience the power and freedom that comes from knowing when they belong and they deserve to feel safe to express their entire being at work. Please allow me to introduce and bring into this conversation Wendy Gates Corbett. Wendy, good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Peter, Pegeen, and it is wonderful to be with all of you this morning.
Here's the first question right off the top, Wendy. Wendy, are you persistent?
I am persistent. Persistence is a muscle that I am building. So I will say that I am not yet consistently persistent. Try saying that. But yes, persistence is a muscle that I am building. I will tell you for the last 3 to 6 months, I have been pretty consistently persistent. So yes.
I love that. I love consistently persistent. I might have to steal that one from you, Wendy, if that's okay.
Go for it. It's yours.
But before we even go any deeper, and I definitely want you to give us a little bit more about your background a little bit later on there, Wendy. I want to bring Ann back into this conversation because many people still have not dove into this Think and Grow Rich book. And Ann, if you could just prepare us for an overview of these principles and what they mean in your life, if you don't mind.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's start. Wow, let's start with desire. And one of the things we know about persistence is that if you don't have a desire, what are you persisting toward? Now, once you have that desire, you must have the faith that is required to achieve the desire. But when you mix the faith with that desire, you now must use what we call the autosuggestion principle, which simply says that you're going to create a statement, self-talk, if you will, an affirmation, whatever it is that works for you. The author suggests you create a statement from the desire chapter, which asks, what are you going to do in terms of how much money you want? What are you going to do to get it? By when? And what's your plan? That becomes an affirmation statement. That is the autosuggestion principle, something you're going to recite in the morning and then in the evening. Now, once you do that, what are you going to do in terms of your specialized knowledge that is required to make that money? Now, with the specialized knowledge, you dig deep into that mindset and use your imagination to take the specialized knowledge and create some kind of product or service. But when you do that, you must have some plans. Step 4 says, what are your organized plans? That's the principle that is required for you to take that imagination and the faith with the autosuggestion and the desire, and now you have some daily steps. But where are you stepping to? Where you must make a decision every single day. That's the next principle. Now, we're in the persistent chapter that says that once you make a decision, you must persistently, when it feels good and when it does not feel good, regardless, you must persist until you succeed with a spirit of excellence in that desire. But one way to persist is to create a mastermind group of accountability. It might be 1 or 2 people that's going to hold you accountable on a regular basis. When you have that mastermind group, one of the things you want to think about is how do you learn within that group to do what the author calls sex transmutation, where you're learning how to transmute your energy every single day toward that desire. But in the transference of that energy, you're going to tap into the next principle, which is your subconscious mind. Yes, your mind is so powerful. But if you don't take the time to tap into that mind using your own brain, Napoleon Hill tells us that greatness is the ability to really tap into your own brain, your mind, Embrace it and then use it. That's all greatness is. So the next principle is your brain. And then you take the last principle, which is the sixth sense, and you mix all of that together and you tap into the infinite intelligence. And there we have the 13 principles and the 13 steps. But listen to the video as we continue to talk about how you can use all of these principles to achieve your desire.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the MasterMind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us. Use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Such a great video. Love to watch that every single week. Let me acknowledge our audience out there. Say good morning to Regina, to Chandra Smith, to Lakeisha Peterson Poplar, and also to who else do we have? Mr. Albert Woods Jr. Good morning to you. Hope you all are well. I hope you all are persistent this morning, and not just this morning, of course, as you move forward in your life and into your career. Wendy, I want to bring you back into our conversation and dive right into this persistence. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill says the majority of people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. I like to call those roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles that are just part of our journey. So give us a little bit of taste of your journey, especially as it ties into this Think and Grow Rich book, if you could.
Yeah, persistence definitely plays a big part in my journey. The first thing that comes to mind for me is when I transitioned from leaving my corporate job 8 years ago to creating my business. I had to be persistent in figuring out how to run a business and creating a pathway that works for me. And it worked really, really well. I started a business that was presentation consulting. Well, about 5 years ago, 3 years into my business, I started having this inkling, this need to talk about first my own experience with belonging and my passion for helping every individual feel like they belong in this world. That passion grew, but that wasn't my initial plan for starting a business, but it was my calling. I felt really strongly that helping convey a message of belonging in this world was really important to me. It was and is my calling. So I had to find the courage and the faith to follow that path and to acknowledge that my belonging work is not separate from my presentation work. So I had, I'm going to fast forward to February of 2020. I had made the decision and the commitment to put my presentation consulting work on the back burner and put my belonging work, my keynote speaking, consulting, and training with individuals and organizations, I was going to go on the front burner. I had a keynote presentation in February and related to belonging, and that was going to be officially my shift. And the presentation went really well. And right after that presentation, COVID hit. My business froze for about 3 months. All business froze, as many people and many businesses also experienced. When business started to thaw last June, the work that was coming to me was presentation related because people had been spending hours and days in Zoom meetings with people who could not present with slides that were horrible. They couldn't take it anymore. So they reached out to me. The business that I received that was coming to me was all presentation related, even though my heart was in the belonging space. The work that was coming to me was presentation related. So of course I took that work, but I still wanted to feed my passion for belonging, to move my belonging work forward. What I realized last August, in August of 2020, is although the work that's coming to me is presentation related, now is the time to be persistent about my belonging work. Although that work wasn't coming right then, what I did is use that time to increase my specialized knowledge. So I started reading a book a month, all related to belonging. I've formulated research that I'm doing related to belonging. And that shift in last August, that shift of realizing that now or August was not the time to be doing belonging work with clients, it didn't mean I couldn't do any work. So I was persistent in moving forward in my belonging work in a different way than I had initially planned. And that was because of persistence.
Love that, Wendy. I love the even the reflection on 2020, that pandemic year for all of us, when our lives changed, business changed, just direction changed wholeheartedly, which was a setback, which was a hindrance to us all, and many people may not have been able to overcome that. Sounds like you were able to do that very, very nicely. But before I pass it over to Pegeen, I want to hear what lack of persistence might look like for you historically, what it has looked like for you, and how you may have been able to overcome that in some form or fashion.
Yeah, although I am in a space of persistence right now, I am not always persistent. The symptoms of lack of persistence that show up for me are lack of organized planning. I tend to have general ideas, and I think they'll pretty much work, and they tend to work themselves out. Well, that's not a definite plan. That's a very fuzzy plan. So I am one who tends not to I don't naturally want to create really specific plans. And what I've noticed is that one of the books that has made a huge difference in my life, in addition to Think and Grow Rich, is the book, The 12-Week Year. For 8 years in business, I have not measured my income, my sales. I have not paid close attention to my numbers. And what I've learned in reading the 12-Week Year is the power of measuring. So just this past July, I implemented the 12-week year. I'm in my first stint of the 12-week year, focused on measuring. And part of this 12-week year is creating plans. It's a very organized plan. And what I love about it is it's not a year-long plan. It's a 3-month plan. It's a 12-week plan. So for me, one of the symptoms of lack of persistence that shows up continuously for me that I need to be really diligent about is lack of planning. The other one that comes up for me is a fear of criticism. And I have self-confidence, not 100% self-confidence 100% of the time. In general, though, I'm a fairly self-confident person. I do suffer from a fear of criticism, though. And one of the things that I've worked on is creating videos. I've made a commitment to post videos on LinkedIn on a regular basis with tidbits about belonging, how we can build belonging in ourselves and in our organizations. I know that's a big hurdle for me, the idea of putting a video out there. I could get really dug in deep with a fear of criticism and having to put out the perfect video. I could spend 2 days recording a 3-minute video if I let myself. So for me to overcome that hurdle, that fear of criticism, I have shifted my mind related to those videos. I have told myself that I need to do them unscripted. I have thoughts about them, but I have not scripted them completely. They are unscripted, they are imperfect, and they are honest. So for me, coming into recording those videos with a mindset of knowing they're going to be imperfect has helped me relieve my own fear of criticism, self-criticism, as well as other criticism. What about you? I'm curious what symptoms of lack of persistence show up for you.
Oh, wow. And first of all, thank you so much for being so transparent there, Wendy, because I know that resonates with someone who is listening in our audience. I'm seeing, of course, our audience, Lakeisha, Aaliyah, Chandra, we're seeing Wyman. Thank you so much for your comments as well. Listen, and thank you so much for this, Wendy, because, we all have historically lack of persistence in our lives, at times in our lives that we were not persistent. Maybe that we bailed out at the sign of a pandemic or the sign of illness or the sign of challenges in our lives. And then we've had to regroup. we've had to come back together. I love the fact sometimes of having a mastermind to be able to help pull us back together, hold us accountable a little bit. Pegeen, this persistence conversation is so deep because it touches a nerve.
Wait a minute, stop talking for a minute, because I'm going to be persistent with you. All right. You did not answer Wendy's question.
Yeah, okay.
And you skated that. So I'm going to be persistently with you. So tell us all, Professor, tell us. So where do you fall down on persistence?
Yeah, your lack of persistence. It's interesting because so I'll even be very, very transparent. It's easy for me in business. It's easier for me in a lot of professional settings. I have to honestly be more persistent in my relationships, in my personal relationships, right? I need to be very focused and persistent as opposed to just throwing in the bag or just giving up when it comes to relationships. I need to be able to be persistent with those that I love and do things and be consistent over and over again. So what does it look like for me? Historically, if I feel like things are not going well, I'll just give up. I'll just give up. Or if my wife says something that I don't love, okay, I'll just stop the conversation. But I've realized that's not healthy for a conversation or healthy for a relationship. I need to stay engaged to a certain extent. So, you know, I say it's more personal and more relationship based with even with extended family for that matter. Sometimes I'll keep them at arm's length, but I need to be able to be more persistent with my extended family and my close family as well. Professionally, I have to admit my military background, my discipline background has really allowed me to adopt a persistence mindset. So sometimes I'm a little too persistent with stuff, meaning that I'm not knowing when to, okay, say enough's enough or to pivot. I'll try to continue to push it a little bit too long. And so that's my story, Pegeen, and I'm sticking to it.
I love what I love what you just said, because I think that people, the persistence in relationships is so it's challenging. It's easy to just walk away. And it's important to walk away from certain people for sure.
Sure.
And it's important to recognize this. And Wendy, thank you so much for, that I love my 12 weeks. 12 weeks, 12 weeks, 12 weeks is really important. And I want to ask you a question. I'm taking this from page 165. Yeah, we are going into the book over here. And Napoleon Hill writes this statement: to get results, you must apply all of the rules until their application becomes a fixed habit with you. In no other way can you develop the necessary money consciousness. Then he has a little line towards the bottom that says, the money consciousness must be created to order unless one is born with such a consciousness. So I'm very curious. What do you do, and what have you been doing persistently to increase your money consciousness? And I'm going to tie it in with self-confidence. How are those two connected, and how do you dig in, tie them together so that your money consciousness as well as your self-confidence kind of connect and grow within you?
Wow, I just had this image of like kneading dough and bread, like meshing together different ingredients, because self-confidence, money mindset, and persistence all roll together for me. I have a default, as Napoleon Hill says in the book, a poverty consciousness is our default mindset. So we need to be diligent and persistent to squash that. I have a very deep-seated poverty consciousness, or minimalistic, don't make a lot of money consciousness. So for me, the whole idea of embracing Napoleon Hill, embracing how much money do you want, focusing on big numbers does not come naturally to me. but I want to be affluent. I want to be abundant. So for me, I have self-talk that says, if I make a lot of money, I will be rejected by my family. Now, it's not my family doesn't say that, but it's a self-talk that that runs deeply and speaks very loudly in my brain. So for me, there's that piece of belonging. You know, if I make a lot of money, I would no longer belong in my family. Well, so I need to be persistent in squashing that mindset and focusing on when I make, when I achieve my definite purpose, when I achieve my definite chief aim, when I make the money that I want, I can do that much more good in the world and for my family. So that's how they all come together. And embracing a money mindset, an abundant mindset, is something I need to be really, really diligent about. So for me, my self-confidence formula, I say it at least twice a day. And when I am feeling in that zone, I will say it up to 5 times a day because it is fuel that keeps me going. The other thing that I've done is I do say my self-confidence formula on a daily basis, at least twice. I also start my self-confidence formula by reciting my definite purpose, because for me, my definite purpose is my why. It's my vision. And for me, my self-confidence formula and my affirmation are my vision. They are how I reach. I'm sorry, they are my mission. They are how I reach my vision. So it's all tied together.
I love it. And for those of you who are listening, the self-confidence formula is in Think and Grow Rich. It's in the faith chapter. And if you're reading this copy, it's on page 51. I had a discussion today with I had a discussion that started yesterday, and this is a perfect, everything you're saying is so aligned with this discussion. This particular person is young. They put a lot of money invested in their savings. They're doing all of that. And they were talking about how they don't have, and they make a very good salary, but they were talking about how they didn't have enough. And so my own default poverty consciousness said, well, stop investing so much so that you could have this going. And, I, even as I was saying, it wasn't sitting right with me. And this morning I got up really early to prepare for the show and texted the person. I said, no, 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 no. Stop, delete everything I just said. You are going in for job interviews within your own company. You only need to earn another $30,000. So in your negotiations, negotiate another $30,000 and keep doing what you're doing because it's working. But this poverty consciousness is very sneaky. And that's why we need the persistence, right? And Wendy, you and I know there is nobody better to talk to us about money consciousness, investment, persistent than the phenomenal Ann McNeil. So, get ready, Wendy. You and I need to prepare. When Ann comes, everybody get your pencils and papers out. Ann, where are you? Hi, Ann. Talk to us. Talk to us.
If I did not know any better, I would have thought this was a setup.
It was. The divine always sets us up. The divine always blesses us.
Well, first of all, let me say, Wendy, and to everyone, what Wendy just described, the process, is what we do in our McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind. And she, of course, is a part of our McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind. And if you would like to be a part with us in increasing your self-confidence, then you can connect by going to annmcneil.com/clarity. Now, coaching. But now let me get to my question. Wendy, wow. I want you to take us back. I want you to take us back and share with us what was your first acknowledgement and experience in not feeling belonged. Where did this come from? Because I think it is a phenomenal work. It is a phenomenal work. And with the Browning of America, there are more people now talking about this subject, and companies now are discussing this subject. But we'd like to hear from you. Take us all the way back to your childhood, or it might have been young adulthood, when you first started feeling like you did not belong, because I think that that's very important as foundational for this work that you're doing, but also the work that we're doing here with these principles. Because I would like to suggest that once you take us back, that the beginning of this book, talking about a desire and all of these principles, which is how you and I met. We'll also ask you about, your first introduction to the book. But I don't want to start there. I want you to take us all the way back to your childhood and share with us, where did that come from? Thank you.
Yeah, I know from the work that I've done on belonging that many of us feel like we don't belong. Many of us don't know where that comes from. For me, I'm very clear on where it comes from. I am biracial and I am adopted by a white family. I have always felt like I belong in my family. That's not where my belonging stuff comes from. When I was adopted, we lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. And I remember when I was about 5 years old, one of my neighbor friends, we used to play all the time. And this was a white family that lived next door. When we would play, we'd have a great time. But when we would get into fights, she would say, "You don't belong here. You're different." I internalized that. And I believed that. I didn't realize that I had internalized it, but I did. Those words, that phrase, "You don't belong here because you're different," led my life for more than 35 years. So for me, I spent, more than 35 years. When I was 35 years old is when I realized that thought had been guiding every single decision, all of my behavior. When I realized that, I realized how strong my need was to prove to you that I wasn't different from you. So for me, I would continually chameleon. I would continually shift who I was, how I behaved, in order to fit in with you so that you wouldn't see me as different. I had an experience at a stoplight when I was 35 years old where I realized that this thought had been leading my life. And from that time, I very gradually, and I'm still working on, but gradually was able to build my ability to squash that voice, to squash that phrase. And as that ability to squash that phrase in my mind has built, I have become me. And I have realized that I get to decide where I belong. You don't decide where I belong, I do. And the freedom and the blossoming that has come from that has led me to become me. I want everyone to experience this. I want everyone to know that they have the power to blossom themselves, and with freedom and with safety. That's where my belonging work comes from. And my belonging work spreads from working in that belief in ourselves as individuals to in the workplace, because we spend so much of our time at work. The work that we do inside needs to blossom in environments that will support it, that will nurture it, that will nourish it. So that's where my passion for working with organizations to create cultures of belonging comes from.
Who better Who better than you? I think this program just took a turn. And we'd like to hear from all of you in the audience. Can you just share one takeaway from what you just heard from Wendy? Because when you think about thinking and growing richer, not about the money, but in every area of your life with self-confidence, with a strong self-image and a strong self-worth, it starts with going back. And I think that I don't think I know every single one of us on this show can relate to what you're saying, because we've all dealt with, are dealing with, or will deal with belonging in blank, belonging as blank. And I'll raise my hand as the first Black female contractor in the state of Florida. You talk about belonging, that's another show for me. But my last question, and Peter, thank you, and Peking, thank you for this grace. But my last question is, Wendy, can you share with us your first introduction to this book and these principles, and what difference has it created in connecting you with your belonging?
Yeah, the first time I was introduced to this book was at a networking event here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I met an individual, and we had a conversation. He shared with me how important Think and Grow Rich was for him. I read the book, but I didn't do any of the work. I literally read the words and just did not do any of the exercises, didn't create an affirmation, didn't decide how much money I wanted. I literally just read the words. Didn't do a thing for me, obviously. When I joined the National Speakers Association and I attended my first national conference, I was brought to the Black NSA meeting at the Influence Conference, at the Influence Conference. And I heard about the idea of a mastermind built around the principles in this book, and applying the principles in this book to our speaking business. That to me was the idea of working through the principles of the book, but people who are all applying the principles in the same way. That was gold for me. And so I thank you, Anne, for leading that mastermind that I've probably attended 7 or 8 of them now. So for me, the difference was the huge difference between just reading the words and living in the book. And now the principles of Think and Grow Rich are infused in my daily life. I begin my day with reciting my definite purpose, my self-confidence formula, and my affirmation, and I end my day with them as well.
Thank you, Peter. We'll allow you to come back.
Thank you so much there, Ann McNeil. I appreciate that as well. What I love, and I hope that everyone who is listening is hearing Wendy talk about what persistence looks like in her life. So even as a quick example, she just mentioned her reciting of her affirmations, of which she is very persistent with. And sometimes we plan to be persistent, but we fall off. Who is holding you accountable for this persistence, right? And that's the power of accountability, and that's the power of a mastermind. And Pegeen, we have an annual event that I would love for you to be able to talk about a little bit, which can assist many with persistence.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So we have the Think and Grow Rich International Masterminders Association. Every year convenes in January. This year it'll be, with this 2022, it'll be January 7th and 8th, and it's the 2022 annual accountability meeting. Now, here's what's really amazing about it is my friends have all gone every year, and every year they create a plan. They review where they've been. They really assess where they are going. And I will tell you, I've been a little bit intimidated about it. Was somebody gonna, call me out if I didn't do anything wrong? And what I've learned from talking to everybody is it's filled with love. It's filled with love and support. so that you receive what you want for your own life because you decided to be persistent. So what I've done is not only have I signed myself up, I bought an extra ticket so I could bring somebody with me. And together we'll go through this process. You really want to join us. It's January 7th and 8th, 2022. It's the Think and Grow Rich 2022 annual accountability meeting. What a way to start the new year. And it's during this experience, and it's in Boca Raton, Florida, at the Embassy Suites. Really want to sign up and bring your children. This is really fascinating. Lots of people bring their children. There is a special children's event where the kids themselves create their own accountability plan. They talk about how they're going to be persistent. And some of these kids, like Peter's little girl, let me tell you something. This little girl, 12 years old right now, opened her own investment system right now, her own investments at 12, because what you persistently put in, no matter how much it is, will grow. And this is how life is. Invest in yourself, grow your life. Join all of us at the Think and Grow Rich International Masterminders Association. Join me as a newbie. We'll hold our hands and we'll jump in the pool. Let's do this.
Jump in the pool there, Pegeen. It's warm. Come on in. As we
I'm going to
start,
be holding your hand, just so you know.
it's all good. You got your floaties on. You're good. You're good to go. As we draw towards a close there, Pegeen, I'm going to come back to you, and as we're having this continuing to have this persistence conversation, I want to bring the audience in and those who are listening to reflect on, what does persistence look like in your life? And then who's holding you accountable for that persistence, right? So if you could type in the chat what persistence looks like for you, give an example. That would be great, because others need to be able to see it. Others need to read about this a little bit, because that may be some inspiration for them. But Pegeen, as we get ready to close, please tell us your ahas, maybe even a story about persistence for you. Let us know how we can stay in touch with you as we continue.
Well, I will tell you, thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your story about belonging. I am a mutt. You try being a mutt that's Latina with light skin. So, I couldn't belong with some groups because, oh, you're not dark enough. And then I would be in other groups. Well, you're not, you don't fit in with us. And, the things, the contortions that I went through to try to feel like I belonged into the group, including, wearing my lipstick to, I don't know why I started doing that years ago, to feel like I was belonging. I think that so my name is Pegeen. I run Power Women Worldwide, and we have a mastermind called Power Women Elite, and that's for women who want to be bold, brave, seen, heard, and paid well as speakers, experts, authors, and authorities. I'm the author of Call to Lead, Success Strategies for Women. Go to Amazon.com and look for Call to Lead, Success Strategies for Women, with me and 17 inspirational women who share their power story. I think the biggest thing that I can tell you right now is persistence is needed now more than ever. I can't help but think about how much you, audience, are needed in the world, how much your brilliance, your wisdom, your insights are needed. So be persistent. Get out of your head and show up. Get out of your head and serve, because like Wendy said, if you want to belong, you have to first choose to belong to yourself. Love yourself persistently. Think the highest, best thoughts of you persistently, and allow yourself to be your greatness persistently. You could always reach me anywhere at PEGINE Power. Just search it online. I'm always there for you. I'll always be there to help. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pegeen, for sharing. Ann McNeil, what a persistent conversation this is. What does persistence look like in your life, Ann McNeil, and how do we stay in touch with you?
Listen, for me, it is that unseen power. It is that unseen power that personally I draw upon during every struggle, every trial, every tribulation, every one of them. It's an unseen power. Call it what you will. But what I'm learning from these principles is that if I don't have a burning desire, not just a desire, but if I don't have a burning desire for exactly what I want, I will not persist. All of these principles and all of these things mean absolutely nothing if it's not something that I desire bad enough to persist until I succeed with a spirit of excellence. And so that's what it means for me. And Wendy, I cannot tell you a phenomenal opening you've given us today. As you've persistently done the work, I've known you now for at least 8 to somewhere between 8 to 10 masterminds, which almost equates to at least 5 years now.
Mhm.
And you're always everywhere working on yourself. We work together, and I'm very excited to have you in my life. And I want to thank you for that. But you always show up. You are always there, everywhere. And so you're doing the work, and we all want to thank you for removing that statement and replacing it with the positive affirmation that works for you. Again, my name is Ann McNeil. I am the Master Wealth Builder. Yes, persistently helping you to build a stronger and better life and business. And I will encourage and challenge each of you to connect with me, like Wendy has done in so many, as a part of our McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind, where we focus on that self-confidence formula every single day. And it is what is making the difference in helping us to persist toward our desire. Again, the McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind. And you can go to annmcneil.com/coaching and you can sign up and connect with us there. Thank you.
Good stuff. And this persistence conversation, again, just allows us to really reflect on our own will and our own desire. And Wendy, as I bring you back in to tell us how we can stay in touch with you and to tell us what you're working on, oftentimes we think that we're going to persist early in the year. So we set New Year's resolutions and we set those types of goals early on, and they fizzle out. And as Ann mentioned, you have to almost take a step back and ask, how willing are you, and what does your desire look like to accomplish that goal? So Wendy, as we bring you back in to ask you what persistence looks like now and into the future for you, and tell us how we can stay in touch with you, some other things that you're working on so that the audience can also stay close to you and what you're doing.
Yeah, for me, persistence looks like doing something towards my definite purpose every single day. Persistence doesn't mean we're going fast. Persistence means, for me, persistence means greater than 0. It means doing something to move towards my goals every single day. It doesn't mean that I am running at 100 miles an hour towards my goal. It doesn't mean that I am doing huge things, taking huge steps towards my goal, but it is something greater than 0. That's how persistence shows up in my life. One of the things I'm really excited about right now is the research that I'm doing on belonging. Between now and the end of the year, I am talking with over 100 people about their experience with belonging from a personal perspective and from a professional perspective. That will be the basis of the book that I publish in 2022. I am excited about several speaking opportunities I've got scheduled in the next few months, where I'm speaking at international conferences related to belonging. You can always stay in touch with me at signature-presentations.com and on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with any and all of you. LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. I want you to know that you belong here just as you are.
Again, thank you so much, Wendy, for your transparency and even mentioning that greater than zero. Because again, sometimes we think that this persistence conversation has to be something grandiose. It doesn't necessarily have to be. How are you moving the needle a little bit consistently? As Wendy said earlier, how are you being consistently persistent? Right? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. And again, I can't stress this enough. How are you being held accountable? And this accountability thing is not like a reprimand thing. It's a, hey, who are you partnering with? Who is in your mastermind to really help you to continue to move along that vein, to help you to continue to move that needle on a regular basis? For me, I meet with my mastermind group every Sunday evening. Every Sunday evening. And listen, I will be honest, some Sundays I don't want to go, right? But I understand, even as just Wendy has mentioned here, that is just moving the needle. It's greater than zero. It's one step closer to what I'm trying to accomplish as well. And so again, your audience members, those of you who are in the chat, what does that look like for you? And it's not necessarily for you to put in the chat. How can you implement this moving forward? Again, personally or professionally. So my name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach, helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames. What another phenomenal show. Ann, Pegeen, and Wendy, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And please, you know where to find us every week, same time, same channel. We look forward to you being part of this conversation and also to find out how Think and Grow Rich is manifesting in your life. Stay close to us. Please don't forget about the annual accountability meeting. Who do we have on deck next week? Who's our guest, our distinguished guest for next week? Do we have that at all? Ann McNeil, do we know who that is?
Yes.
I put you on the spot. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was calling Brittany's name as you were calling my name. Brittany, you have the JPEG for next week, please. And she's searching.
And we may not have it yet next week, but we are
But
certain
wait. Let me say this.
Yeah.
We're booked till the end of December.
Nice.
Yes, we're booked to the end of December. And yes. As a matter of fact, we're booking people now for 2022. So if you're listening and you'd like to be back on the show or come on the show for the very first time, yes, you can let us know by going to internationalmasterminders.com. That's masterminders with an S. And let us hear from you in the chat, and we will send you a registration for our Sign Up Genius to register. But yes, we are booking into 2022, and we have some phenomenal guests that's coming on, like Les Brown and some other people that live in this book and these principles. And many of the people that you hear on a daily basis, whether you listen to YouTube or any of these, they're living in this book, same book. I mean, from Earl Nightingale to Jim Rohn to Rodriguez, any of them, all of them, Maxwell, all of them. This is the foundational principles that they use. Now, if it's good enough for them, what about you as you listen? Yes, you can try the rest, but you can also try the best. And that's what you're going to get here from us as we have this conversation. And it just might be a surprise. You may need to come back next week to find out who's going to be our guest next week. Because let's see, Wendy, did she put something in the chat, private chat? And she did not. So Wendy, we'll say that. But I do want to let everybody know that the true and false question, I will ask the question again, and I'll tell you what the answer is. The true and false question that we asked at the beginning of the program was, is persistence a state of mind? And actually, Peter rephrased it, but do you think that persistence is a state of mind and you can create it or develop it? Is that true or false? Please put your answer in the chat. Now, with that being said, you can go to page 169 and find the answer to that question. Thank you.
Awesome.
Back to you,
Thank you
Peter.
so
We
much,
can
Peter
wrap
and
up. They have to
McNeil.
come back next week to find out who the guest is.
That's quite all right. Wendy, we thank you again so much. Truly appreciate your stories and your reflection on persistence. Those of you who are watching, we hope that you want to be one of our distinguished guests in the future. So please definitely sign on. We would love to have you. In the meantime, please be safe. Please dive into the book, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.